Hey guys, tonight we slip into shackles literally as you arrive, bruised and barefoot, in a Norse slave camp. The air is thick with the stench of sweat, wood smoke, and something vaguely sour, maybe fermented fish, maybe fear. You're not sure yet, but you're definitely sure of this. You probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments, where are you listening from, and what time is it where you are right now. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your wrists are raw. The rope they tied you with was made from flax, rough and biting. You're herded off the longboat like cattle, eyes blinking against the glare of a gray, spitting sky. Behind you, someone wails in a language you don't understand. Ahead, a camp, a fence, and the low rumble of male laughter. Not the joyful kind. Welcome to a Viking slave encampment, circa 870 CE. You don't know the year, but you know this much: you're not leaving anytime soon. The ground squelches under your feet as you're shoved toward the gate. A pair of half-frozen guards eye you with the bored menace of men used to suffering, but only other people's. One jabs your ribs with the blunt end of a spear. Move. He doesn't say it in your language, but suffering, like music, has its universal notes. Inside the camp, everything feels wrong. The houses are long, low, and built like wooden beasts, their thatched roofs sagging with wet. You catch the scent of blood. Not fresh, not dried, just there, like it seeped into the wood grain of the place. Something tells you this isn't a temporary camp. This is a system. Historically, Norse slave camps' royal quarters were part of a booming trade. Slaves were the grease that kept Viking expansion running, captured from raids in Ireland, the Baltics, and even inland France. You, tonight, are one of the unlucky statistics. You're shoved toward a rickety outbuilding with a slanted roof. Other captives are already inside, eyes wide, hands trembling. They don't speak to you. Some pretend not to see you. One girl, maybe 13, rocks back and forth. She's got no shoes. You suddenly remember the warmth of your home hearthened. Your stomach folds in on itself. An older man lies in the corner, barely breathing. You wonder if he's asleep. You find out he's not when a guard drags him out by the ankle without a word. The rest of the hut stays frozen, as if exhaling might get them chosen next. Historians still argue whether Viking slavery was as brutal as Roman practices or more domestic, akin to unpaid labor. But trust me, you don't need a history degree to feel what you feel now. Your property, the kind with a short shelf life. The sky darkens. A storm's moving in. Wind punches through the slats of the hut, bringing with it the howl of distant dogs, sore, maybe wolves. You huddle against the wall. It's damp. A rat scuttles past your knee like it owns the place. Honestly, it probably does. You're exhausted, but sleep is elusive. Your body is still in survival mode. You're calculating things like where the door is, who looks weakest, and whether you could outrun someone with only one shoe. You probably couldn't. Your feet are already starting to swell. And then comes the call, a bell or a horn, or something that sounds like a walrus being strangled. It's mealtime, apparently. No one tells you the rules. You just follow the others into a central yard where a vat of stew bubbles ominously over a smoky fire. You get a ladleful. It tastes like sadness. You eat it anyway. A nearby guard chuckles. He's got 2 missing fingers and a necklace made of tiny bones. You pretend not to look. He pretends he doesn't see you staring. He probably likes it that way. You stumble back to the hut as night falls for real. Thunder cracks overhead like a war drum. The others are already lying down, bodies curled against each other for warmth, not affection. The floor is straw, or what's left of it, and crawling with more life than you want to think about. Someone coughs. Someone else whimpers in their sleep. You try to remember your name. It doesn't come easily, but what does come is the creeping knowledge that in this place, names don't matter. Labels do, and yours is slave. As the wind howls through the cracks, you pull your knees to your chest and try to disappear into yourself. Your back aches, your wrists bleed, and the worst part, you've only just arrived. You're stripped, prodded, and sold like livestock, your value measured in silver and teeth. The next morning is not heralded by sunlight or birdsong. It's announced by a cold splash of water to the face. Not even a bucket, just a rag, wrung out by someone who smells like old ale and cruelty. You wake, choking, spluttering, teeth clattering from cold, confusion, and hunger. The hut's occupants are already moving, some limping, some crying softly. You don't get to mourn your dignity. There's no time for that here. Outside, the mud is thicker, stickier. It clings to your ankles like guilt. A crowd is forming, slaves on one side, Vikings on the other, but not the berserker kind. These are merchants, minor chieftains, landowners. They're dressed in thick wool cloaks, fastened with bronze pins, boots worn smooth, and the confidence of men who've never had to bow to anyone. You're herded into a pen made of sharpened branches. It smells like old blood and wet fur. Someone behind you retches. You're not even surprised anymore. A bearded man with one eye and a scar across his jaw walks past, muttering to himself as he inspects each person like he's selecting melons at a market. He stops in front of you, grabs your jaw, tilts your face up. Teeth, he grunts. You don't understand the word, but his fingers are already prying your mouth open like you're a horse. He smells like fish oil and dead things. He grins. You'll fetch 10, he says to someone. You don't know if that's good or bad, but judging by the pat on your head like you're a promising dog, it's probably bad. Historically, Viking slave markets were brutal, transactional affairs. Captives were priced by age, gender, health, and utility. Historians still argue whether children were favored for their potential labor or simply sold more often due to their higher trainability. Either way, if you're young and able-bodied tonight, you're a hot commodity. A man in a fur-lined cloak, thin as a whip, and with eyes like a bored snake, raises 2 fingers. The one-eyed buyer nods. It's settled. You've been sold. There's no receipt, no signature, just a nod and a coin tossed into a sack. You don't get to know your price, but you'll remember the buyer's face. You'll have to. The merchanteur new owner technically doesn't speak to you. He just gestures. You follow. What else can you do? The other slaves avoid your eyes. You're not part of them anymore. You're fresh meat, and fresh meat spoils fast. As you walk behind him toward the camp's outer boundary, you notice his possessions: a worn axe, a jug of mead tied to his belt, and a goat following loyally at his heels. The goat eyes you. You eye it back. You both seem to understand what's happening. The merchant lets call him Rurikleads you to a cart. It's not for riding in, it's for pulling. He gestures again, and now you understand. You're the engine. As he latches the harness around your chest, he finally speaks a word you understand. Move, and move you do. Through mud, past pine trees, along a winding path, away from the auction. You drag the cart as best you can. Your feet slip, your legs shake. The goat trots beside you, smug and dry. You'd trade places with it in a heartbeat. You pass other homes' long houses with carved beams and smoking chimneys. In the distance, you hear laughter and smell something cooking. You wonder what it's like to live in one of those houses, to have your name called with love instead of listed on a ledger. Eventually, Rurik's home comes into view. It's smaller than the others, sagging, leaning. The roof looks like it lost a battle with the last storm. Smoke curls from a crooked chimney. There's a pen for animals, mostly empty, and a pile of bones out back that you decide not to look at too closely. He unhooks you, hands you a bucket, points at a well. Water, then chop, he says, miming an axe swing. Congratulations, you now have chores. You shuffle toward the well. Your arms barely obey. Each movement feels like pushing through wet sand. When the bucket's full, it's almost too heavy to lift, but you do it, because you're scared of what happens if you don't. Then, the chopping. You're handed a rusted axe head tied to a cracked handle. It vibrates in your palm with every strike. The wood is hard, gnarled, and smells like rot. After 5 logs, your shoulders scream. After 10, your hands bleed. Rurik sits nearby, sharpening a knife and sipping from his mead jug. He doesn't offer you any. The goat does. It licks your elbow. You don't have the strength to swat it away. The sun begins to lower. Your stomach is hollow. Your body is bruised. But the worst part of all, you know this is the good part of the day. You're bought by a farmer with bad breath and worse intentions. Yes, the goat sleeps inside. The door to your new home creaks open like it's apologizing. Rurik grunts for you to follow him inside. You duck through the low frame, and the first thing you notice is the warm, thick, smoky, and sour. It clings to your skin, not unlike guilt or wet wool. The smell hits you next. Sweat, mold, something pickled, something dead. It's not just unpleasant, it's sentient. Inside, the longhouse is a single open room, one half for living, one half for sleeping, and somewhere in between is a pile of firewood, and, inexplicably, a goat with its own bed of straw. The goat looks up at you like it's better than you. It probably is. There are furs stretched over the rafters to trap heat, and smoke curls upward from a central hearth. A pot bubbles, slowly, something brown and lumpy inside. Rurik throws off his cloak, hangs it on a nail, then turns to you. He says something, his dialect thick words, slurred by too much mead and not enough education. You don't understand the language, but the meaning is clear when he tosses you a rolled-up mat that smells like mildew and dog. He points to a spot near the wall, just behind the goat. That's your bed. You hesitate for half a second. His eyes narrow. You drop to your knees. He sits on a wooden stool, carved with runes, probably his father Swerkhand, drinks like it's the one skill he mastered. You try not to look at him too much, but you can feel his gaze, not curious, not kind, measuring like he's wondering how many winters you'll last. The fire crackles, but it gives no real comfort. It's not a hearth built for company. It's built for control. Historically, many Norse slaves were absorbed into small farms and homesteads, forced to live under the same roof as their owners, not out of kindness, but logistics. The idea that proximity softened the treatment is still debated. Historians still argue whether such living arrangements led to a kind of twisted familiarity or simply made it easier to exert control. You're handed a bowl. You're not sure what's in it. Possibly turnip, maybe old root vegetables, boiled until memoryless. It's warm, though. You eat because hunger overrides hesitation. After the meal, Rurik stands, stretches, and walks past you toward the back of the longhouse, where a curtain made of stitched animal skins separates a crude sleeping area. You hear him unbuckle his belt. He belches, something thuds. You sit still, hoping silence will make you invisible. The goat lies down beside you. It exhales loudly, like it's been through this too many times. You try to sleep, curling onto your mat, but the air is too thick, the room too alive. Rurik snores like a dying bear, every creak of the beams overhead. Your hands are already blistered, and still this is the quietest moment you've had since you were captured. Your mind drifts. You remember a riverbank, someone's laughter. You don't know whose anymore. It was another world, a place with names and choices. Now you're a shape in the dark, next to a goat that smells better than you do. There's a moment brief and terrible when you think, maybe this isn't so bad. You shake it off. That kind of thought is how they win. That's how people stay here forever, not in chains, but in surrender. The fire pops loudly. Embers dance upward, like little spirits fleeing the scene. You close your eyes. You dream of home, but it's wrong. The faces are blurred. The language is lost. You wake, shivering and sweaty, unsure of where you are. The longhouse is silent, save for Rurik's grunts and the goat's steady chewing on something, maybe rope, maybe your mat. You shift your body. The floor is hard and cold beneath the thin mat. Something small and many-legged scuttles across your arm. You flick it off and whisper a curse, half to the bug, half to fate. Suddenly, a low creak behind the curtain. Rurik stirs. You freeze. Your breath holds like it owes rent, but he doesn't get up, just groans and rolls over. You don't know what you were expecting. Maybe you do. You just don't want to name it. Sleep returns slowly. Not real sleep, just a shallow, twitchy doze where every sound feels like a warning. And that's when it hits you. You'll wake up tomorrow, and this will happen again, and the next day, and the next, until something breaks. Maybe your body, maybe your mind, maybe the goat. You laugh softly. The goat bleats, offended. You crawl into a splinter-ridden hut with no chimney, shared by 3 other souls and 1 angry lice colony. Morning, if you can call it that, comes as a gray smear across the horizon, and the sound of Rurik's heavy feet thudding toward you. He kicks the side of your mat. You jolt upright. So does the goat. Neither of you is happy about it. He says something in a sing-song tone that, in another context, might almost sound cheerful, like a man announcing breakfast. But here, it means get moving. You're not invited to the warmth of his hearth again. Not yet. Today, you're being relocated. You're led through a patch of mud and bramble, deeper into the outer ring of the settlement. Here, the longhouses thin out. These structures are more like holding pens than homes, half-shelters, leaning at odd angles, hastily patched with bark, turf, or whatever driftwood they dragged from the river. Rurik points to one of the smaller huts. The door is little more than a hanging pelt, stiff with frost and age. You pull it aside and duck in, half expecting to be alone. You're not. Whose face is so hollowed out, she looks carved from driftwood, and a younger boy, maybe 15, curled in a corner with swollen hands and fear in his eyes. No one speaks. The floor is hard-packed earth. A few broken boards have been laid down where water tends to pool. The ceiling slants so low in the back that standing upright is a dream for another life. There is no chimney. Smoke from a pitiful, smoldering ember escapes through a hole in the wall, or doesn't, mostly. The woman gestures silently toward a blanket, if it can be called that. It's more lice than wool. You understand instantly that it's not a welcoming gesture. It's a rotation system. You get one corner. The bugs get the rest. Historically, most Viking-era thralls weren't housed in the main family quarters. They were kept in secondary structures, slaves' quarters, sheds, even dugouts, especially during the 10th and 11th centuries, when larger estates had dozens of forced laborers. Historians still argue whether conditions like these were standard across Norse settlements or reserved for the lowest valued laborers. Judging by your accommodation, you've ranked pretty low. You sit down or squat, really. There's no real way to rest here that doesn't leave you sore or damp. The man with the eyebrow problem finally speaks. "Don't snore," he mutters. You nod. The hut is full of soundless negotiation. The boy in the corner watches you like he has seen newcomers before people who don tea yet know the rules. You decide not to talk. It feels safer to be invisible here. Outside, the wind picks up. A storm's coming. You can tell by the way the boards creak and sigh. Water starts to drip through the thatch above your head. One drop lands on your nose, then another. You shift slightly, and your foot brushes against something furry. It's a rat. It doesn't even run, just glares at you as if to say, "This is my house, too." You try to sleep, but it's hard to breathe. The smoke from the smoldering ember doesn't rise, it coils low, stinging your eyes and throat. You press your face against the damp fur pelt wall and try to find cleaner air. It's a fool's errand. The lice arrive just after midnight. You feel them first, tiny, insistent itches along your scalp, your neck, the seam of your trousers. You scratch hard. The others don't even react. This is normal. Lice are part of the ecosystem here, like firewood and bad dreams. And the smell, it builds slowly. A mix of unwashed bodies, smoke, and the sour temps of something that may have once been milk. Your eyes water. Your stomach turns. You bury your face in the crook of your arm and think about air that Dosen tea hurt. At some point, the boy gets up, walks to the corner, and relieves himself in a cracked clay pot. You wonder if he'll take it outside in the morning. Then you realize, no, probably not. That's your job now. Sleep doesn't come. You drift into something, shallower half-awareness. In this state, time stops. The night becomes a blur of coughing, itching, shivering, and trying not to touch anyone unless you absolutely have to. You hear someone cry out in a dream. You hear the woman muttering in a language you don't know. You hear something thump against the wall, an animal, a branch. Your heartbeat speeds up until you remember it doesn't matter. Nothing outside is worse than what's already inside. Eventually, light starts to creep through the cracks. A sliver of dawn. You survived the night, kind of. But then you realize it's not over. Morning doesn't bring hope. It brings chores, orders, pain. And that's when it really sets in. This hut isn't temporary. It's not a cage you'll be moved from. It's your home now. Your meal might be dried fish skin, moldy grain, or just broth from yesterday's brothbon AP. You're awakened by the man with no eyebrows kicking your foot, not violently, just enough to remind you where you are and what you've forgotten. That here, sleep is rationed like kindness. You sit up too fast and hit your head on a low beam. The hut creaks in sympathy. The lice do not. The others are already moving. The woman drags herself toward the door and pushes aside the stiff pelt that passes for privacy. Cold air rushes in, sharp and wet with fog. You stumble after them. Your legs ache. Your stomach growls with the kind of emptiness that isn't just hunger anymore. It essay hollowing. Outside, the morning mist licks at your skin. It's not fully daylight yet, but the settlement is already stirring. Other slaves, some older, some limping, some with faces as cracked as old leather, gather around a soot-blackened cauldron suspended over a low fire. You follow the smell. Well, smell might be generous. It's more like steam with ambition. A few guards lean lazily nearby, spears in hand but eyes distant, like they've done this too many times to care. One yawns so wide you can count his missing teeth. You queue up, or at least you try. There's no real line, just a shifting mass of people who've learned to move quickly, quietly, and without eye contact. When your turn comes, you hold out the cracked clay bowl you were issued yesterday. It's chipped at the rim and smells faintly of ... onions, soap, regret. The server is another thrall, older, nearly blind, eyes cloudy and blank. He ladles something into your bowl, a grayish liquid with a few floating particles you really hope aren't insects. You nod in thanks. He doesn't see it, doesn't care. You take a sip. It's hot. That's the best thing about it. The taste is ambiguous. Maybe barley, maybe fish skin, maybe just whatever was left in the bottom of the pot last night, watered down and reheated for efficiency. You chew something that might be a sprout or cartilage. You don't ask. Historically, Viking slaves subsisted on the worst scraps: sour porridge, spoiled grain, hardened bread soaked in weak broth. Meat was rare, and when it appeared, it usually came in the form of sinew, offal, or leftovers that the family wouldn't feed to the dog, though the goat, of course, ate quite well. Historians still argue whether Viking slave diets were regionally variable or uniformly awful, but either way, your bowl right now would never make it to a food blog. You sit on a damp log to eat, or slurp, really. The others say nothing, eat fast. The boy beside you drops his bowl. It cracks in two. He freezes. Everyone else stops chewing. A guard strolls over. He doesn't yell. He just picks up the broken halves, looks at the boy, then slaps him hard enough to send him into the mud. One hit, open palm. No rage, just routine. Then he tosses the shards into the fire. The boy doesn't cry. He just stares at the smoke curling upward, his eyes reflecting the flames. You stare too. You hold your bowl tighter. After breakfast, if you can call it that, the real day begins. You're assigned to firewood duty again. Your hands haven't healed from yesterday, but apparently that's not anyone's problem. You re-given the same dull axe. It's a mindless rhythm. Chop, drag, stack. Splinters dig into your palms. You ignore them. There's no point in removing them. Infections, not a possibility. Here it's a certainty. You work beside a girl with hair like straw and eyes that have seen too many winters. She doesn't speak to you. She just works. Her rhythm is faster than yours. She's missing 2 fingers on her left hand. You don't ask. At midday, there's no meal, just a pause. The slaves crouch in the shade of the longhouse wall, panting. Someone chews on a piece of hardtack stolen from who knows where. The boy from the hut is gone. You don't ask. You won't like the answer. You return to your work. The axe feels heavier, the wood wetter, your back tighter. Every swing feels like your spine is filing for divorce. As evening approaches, the wind shifts and carries with it a scent-smoked meat. You follow the smell with your nose like a starving dog, but it's not for you. It's for Rurik and the other landowners. You can even hear laughter from his longhouse. Someone's playing a harp, probably not very well. Dinner for you. Leftovers, if you're lucky. And tonight, you are. You're handed a small piece of something chewy, maybe dried fish skin, maybe actual leather. It tastes like regret, but your stomach is too grateful to care. You chew slowly, afraid of how fast it might vanish. The stars begin to blink in above, but you're too tired to admire them. The lice are already getting restless again. Your body is cracked and sore. But the worst thing is how normal it already feels. You sit on the edge of the woodpile, watching the fire in the main courtyard die down. The embers glow like the last lights of the world. You wonder how long you can do this. A week? A month? Forever? You look down at the fish skin in your hand, and you eat it anyway. No soap, no privacy. And you bathe once a season. If it rains enough, you wake scratching. Your scalp itches with the fury of 1,000 tiny feet. You scratch too hard and nick your skin. The pain is sharp, quick, and honestly, a relief. It reminds you you're still here, still alive, still part of this insect-themed nightmare of a life. The others are already outside. You step into the pale morning light, and the smell of people who haven tea bathed in weeks, maybe months. It's the scent of sour sweat, musty clothes, and layers of dirt so compacted they're practically armor. And this, you're told, is normal. Your first clue should have been that no one carries water for washing. The water from the well. That's for drinking, not for vanity. A splash on the face in the morning is the most anyone dares, and only if Rurik isn't watching. Too much waste, he says. The goat drinks more water than you do. You start to understand how filth becomes permanent. It's not just accepted, it's culturally reinforced. Bathing is rare. Changing clothes is a fantasy. And your hair. You don't want to talk about your hair. Let's just say it no longer obeys the laws of physics. You glance around the slave quarters and see that no one else seems bothered. They reused to the way grime sticks to the back of your neck like a second skin. Used to the blackened fingernails, the stiffened wool that never quite dries. There's a hierarchy of cleanliness here, and you're at the bottom, just above the goat. One of the older thralls, a man with a jaw that's clearly been broken more than once, hands you a piece of cloth. It's stiff and slightly damp. Wipe, he says. You stare at it. What's wipe? He gestures. Hands, face, armpits. Then gives it a sniff and grimaces. Too late, he mutters. Historically, Norse hygiene is a curious contradiction. Archaeological evidence shows Vikings owned combs, tweezers, and even ear spoons, leading many to believe they were cleaner than other medieval Europeans. But slaves, entirely different category. Historians still argue whether thralls had access to the same grooming tools or were purposefully denied them as a means of dehumanization. You have no comb, no soap, no privacy. You do, however, have an itch in places you can't reach without crying. And then there's the latrine, or, more accurately, the trench. You're directed toward a ditch dug just beyond the outer paddock. No walls, no cover, just the cold wind and the judgmental stares of chickens. You learn quickly to go early before the line forms, before the smell becomes overwhelming, before the flies claim dominion. The worst part, no toilet paper, of course, just moss, if you're lucky. Otherwise, your hand. And then that same hand is expected to carry wood, prepare food, and serve your master. You begin to understand why illness spreads like rumor here. You try to remember what clean felt like. You can't. Once a week, maybe. If the weather is warm, you're allowed to wade into the icy stream that borders the edge of the property. Not to bathe, for chores. Washing linens, soaking clothes, scrubbing tools. But if you dunk your head quickly while the guards aren't looking, you might get lucky. Today is not that day. Today, the cold bites through your clothes, and you work until your fingertips go numb, scrubbing blood from an old tunic that probably belonged to someone who didn't make it past their second season. Afterward, you crouch in the hut, pressing your damp clothes against your skin and shivering while the others pretend not to notice your teeth chattering. The lice are delighted by the humidity. They throw a party in your collar. You learn tricks. You burn the seams of your tunic with an ember to chase out the bugs. You rub ash into your scalp in place of soap. You braid your hair tightly and hope the dirt hides the worst of the smell. But it's never enough. At night, the stink settles in like fog. You curl away from the others, not out of pride, but mercy. You don't want anyone to smell you. You don't want to smell yourself. And yet Rurik doesn't seem to mind. He passes you in the longhouse and sniffs the air, then laughs. Smells like loyalty, he says, which is just his way of calling you less than human. You stare at the fire and imagine rivers, warm ones, full of soap and bubbles and lemon-scented miracles. You dream of a world where your skin isn't a map of bruises and grime, where water is for more than survival. But for now, you scratch again, behind your ear this time, and mutter the unofficial slogan of the Norse slave camp. Well, at least the goat still likes me. Sleep's a luxury when wolves, rival clans, and your owner's paranoia keep you standing half the night. You are so tired, your bones feel borrowed. After a full day of hauling firewood, scrubbing tools, and carrying buckets of freezing water that slosh and bruise your thighs with every step, your body aches in places you didn't even know could ache. Your eyelids flutter with exhaustion. But tonight, you don't get to sleep. Rurik decides it's your turn to take night watch. This isn't a request. He points at you with the tip of his knife knot, threatening, exactly, just matter of fact. Stand, eyes open, if wolf come, scream. Then he chuckles, like you're a dog he's trained. You don't dare argue. The last slave who did was made to kneel in a pit of freezing water for an hour. His legs haven't worked right since, so now you're here on a small wooden platform near the animal pen, cloaked in something that once belonged to someone with fleas and a terrible sense of style. It doesn't keep out the cold. Nothing does. The wind slices across the plains and through your tattered tunic like it's not even there. You try to stay awake. The stars are bright, but there's no comfort in them. Just sharp, white reminders of how far from anything warm you really are. The trees groan in the wind. Every creak sounds like something coming. Wolves, bandits, something worse. Historically, Viking settlements, specially isolated farms, were frequently targeted by rival clans and raiding parties. Slaves were tasked with both labor and security. Historians still argue whether thralls were truly trusted to keep watch or merely used as early warning systems. Judging by your current job description, you're closer to bait than guard. You grip your spear. It's a stick, really sharpened at the end, but barely taller than your shoulder. Not that it matters. If anything comes, you're not expected to fight it. Just scream loudly enough to wake Rurik and maybe the goat. From the woods, a low howl rolls over the treetops. Your blood chills. Then another closer. You freeze. The spear trembles in your hands, but the sound passes. The wolves aren't here, yet still, you stay locked in place, eyes wide. You can't shake the image of their eyes in the dark, camber, hungry. And not just for animals. You've heard the stories. They don't always stop at sheep. You turn to scan the ridge and notice movement. Not wolves this time, two figures, walking toward the outer fence. You squint. It's hard to see through the fog of your own breath, but they're not guards. They're quiet, too quiet. Then you realize it's not a raid. It's two other slaves trying to run. Your breath catches. You should shout. That's what Rurik expects. That's what might keep you alive. But something deep in your gut clenches. You hesitate. They reach the fence and climb. Silent, fast, like they've practiced this. You make no sound. They vanish into the tree line. You say nothing. You'll never see them again one way or another. You feel both guilty and proud. Sometime around the third hour, you nod off, just for a second. Your knees buckle. The spear slips. You jolt awake, panic flaring like a struck match. The goat is staring at you. It bleats loud. A torch flares behind you. Rurik, you curse under your breath. He doesn't say anything, just narrows his eyes. Don't sleep, he mutters. Next time pit. Then he turns and walks back to his longhouse. You stay very, very awake after that. The hours crawl. The wind howls again. The fire in the central yard dies to embers. The world shrinks to shadows and your own shivering limbs. Sleep is a memory now, a soft, warm thing you once knew. Now it's a punishment withheld. And it's not just the cold or the wolves or the fear that keeps you alerted. It's knowing that no matter how tired you are, the work doesn't stop. Dawn won't come with mercy, only more orders. By the time the sun starts to smear the sky with dull orange, your legs are lead, your arms are limp, your eyes burn like you've cried all night, even if you haven't shed a single tear. You climb down from the platform. Rurik doesn't thank you. No one does. You trudge back toward the hut, and for just a moment, you wish the wolves had come. You're not allowed to talk, but you better understand commands, or you'll understand the back of a hand. You wake to a sharp jab in your ribs. The boy from your hut is staring down at you, eyes wide. He doesn't speak, just gestures, frantic, toward the doorway. You scramble up, disoriented, your limbs still heavy from your half-sleep on cold dirt. Your body wants more rest. Your body gets laughter in return. Outside, Rurik is already shouting. At who doesn't matter. When he's loud, everyone runs. You join the others, assembling in the yard, like ants at the sound of bootsteps. You keep your eyes down, your hands at your sides, your mouth shut. These are the rules. You didn't learn them from a book. You learned them from bruises. Rurik walks through the group with his arms crossed, scanning faces like a butcher, choosing livestock. His nose twitches like he's trying to sniff out laziness. He stops in front of someone and speaks quickly in that slurry Norse dialect that you still can parse. You watch the slave nod, then dash off toward the woodshed. You try to look useful. He stops in front of you, says something. You freeze. He repeats it, louder, slower, like you're stupid instead of foreign. You blink. Your mind races, trying to pull meaning from a word you've only heard shouted at pigs and oxen. Is it a command? A question? A threat? You manage a nod, a half step backward, and a muttered jaw, just to sound cooperative. Wrong choice. Rurik's hand lashes out before you even register it. Your cheek explodes with heat. Your ears ring. The world tilts, and then the laughter starts. Not from your fellow thralls. No, just the guards, and maybe the goat. The other slaves look away. Some flinch. No one helps. Rurik steps in close, speaking low and slow now. Every syllable, a jab you hear. You obey, you don't speak. That part. From now on, you're not to use your voice unless ordered. And even then, only in certain tones. No questions, no backtalk, just obedience. It's a system built not just on work, but on silence, control. Dull your tongue, and you dull your will. Historically, Viking slaves Riller had no legal voice. Literally, they couldn't testify in court, couldn't negotiate, couldn't even defend themselves if accused. Many historians still argue whether this silence was practical or symbolic, whether it was about keeping order or making sure you forgot you were ever anything else. Either way, you're silent now. Your work assignment today is in the fields. You're paired with the girl missing 2 fingers and the straw-colored hair. She doesn't speak either. Not to you, not to anyone. Just hums softly as she rakes dry earth with a stick too short for her height. The 2 of you till rows together. The soil is unforgiving, clotted with stones and tangled with old roots. Your hands blister. Again, your back screams. Again, at one point. You cough, and she glances at you just briefly, but says nothing. It's strange how communication works when talking is forbidden. A nod, a look, a raised eyebrow. You start to read people by the tilt of their heads and the tension in their shoulders. You notice more. You have to. Mistakes get you hurt. A guard walks past. You drop your eyes to the dirt. You become dirt. He pauses, spits, moves on. The girl sighs barely and hands you a water gourd. You drink quickly and hand it back without a word. She nods. That's friendship now. Later, a child slave drops a basket of onions. They scatter everywhere. The child freezes. A guard raises a stick. You move without thinking. You kneel, scooping onions into the basket. Your movements fast but careful, avoiding eye contact. You're not trying to help the child. Not really. You're trying to blur the moment, distract the eyes that carry punishment. It works. The guard grunts, moves on. The child stares at you for a moment, then disappears into the shed. You don't expect thanks. At night, back in the hut, no one talks about the day. No one mentions the slap, the onions, the dust you coughed up for hours. There's a rhythm to silence here. It's not emptiness. It's protection. You curl into your blanket, every part of you aching, not just the muscles, but the mind. The voice inside your head still screams, still wants to speak, to argue, to scream your real name. But your mouth doesn't move. You've learned something important today. Words have weight, and silence has armor. A Norse festival arrives with drinking songs and a human sacrifice you really hope isn't you. You wake up to noise, real noise, not just coughing or pigs squealing or guards shouting, but laughter, singing, drums. You blink, confused. Did you die? No, your back still hurts. Your mouth is still dry. You're still here, crammed in a hut with bodies and lice and stale breath, but outside it sounds like joy. You crawl from the hut, rubbing your eyes. The longhouse yard is alive with motion. People dart back and forth, carrying bundles of hay, baskets of food, jugs of ale. Children actual free, children are, chasing each other with wooden swords. And even Rurik looks, not angry, exactly, but focused, purposeful. Something's happening. You whisper to the girl beside you just one word, why? She shakes her head and makes a motion like raising a cup. Festival. You follow orders quickly that morning. Everyone does. No one wants to be the reason Rurik snaps during what must be a sacred day. You're ordered to wash, yes, wash in the freezing river. Your skin shrinks from the cold, but the shock almost feels like relief, a break in the monotony. You scrub your face with a handful of sand and splash water behind your ears until they sting. When you're done, you almost feel like a person again. Almost. You're handed a cleaner tunic, not clean, but cleaner and sent to help prep the feast. You peel root vegetables with a blunt knife alongside 3 other thralls, the girl among them. The pile is endless, and your fingers are numb, but the smells wafting from the roasting pit make it bearable. Meat, real meat. Historically, Viking festivals, especially those honoring gods like Odin, Thor, or Freyrin, involved large gatherings, communal meals, and rituals that blended celebration and sacrifice. Slaves often played central roles, preparing food, cleaning, or, sometimes, serving as the main attraction. Historians still argue whether human sacrifices were regular events or rare exceptions dramatized by later writers, but when you read in a slave camp, even the rumors feel real. You hear someone mutter that word you recognize. It means blood. Your heart stutters. In the center of the camp, a tall wooden pole has been erected, topped with branches, carved with runes. Rurik's wife, for someone acting like one drapes it in furs and garlands of dried flowers. Others begin singing low chants in Old Norse. The rhythm vibrates in your chest. Rurik stands near the fire pit, holding a large cup. Ale spills over his fingers as he raises it skyward and calls out a prayer. Everyone cheers, then drinks. Then someone hurls a whole pig carcass into the fire, and fat crackles as smoke rises. You serve food, you pour drinks, you carry bowls back and forth, trying not to trip, trying not to draw attention. But every time someone glances your way, your stomach knots, because someone always dies at these things. Maybe it's a goat, maybe it's a lamb, maybe it's you. Later, as dusk bleeds across the horizon, a hush falls. A man in dark robes approaches the pole. He chants. People gather in a circle. You're pulled into the outer ring, along with the other slaves. You try to keep your breathing slow. The chanting builds. The robed man holds something high. A dagger. No, a ceremonial blade, wide, blunt, old. He presses it to the throat of a rooster. The bird shrieks, then silence. The blade flashes. Feathers drift. You let out a breath you didn't know you were holding. Not you, not this time. The blood is caught in a bowl and poured onto the ground beneath the pole. The people cheer. Some cry. Others look quietly satisfied, like their gods have been well fed. You feel something between nausea and relief. Then Rurik points to you. You freeze. He gestures you forward, then slams a heavy cup into your hand. Ale, strong, foamy. He raises his cup again and grunts. You get it. Drink. You hesitate just a second too long. A murmur runs through the crowd. Rurik's eyes narrow. So you raise the cup and drink. It tastes like rotten apples and wood smoke. It burns your throat and numbs your tongue. But you keep drinking. Not because you want to be, 'cause you have to. The crowd cheers. You stagger back. Later, as the fire roars and people dance in uneven circles, you sit on a stump and let your head spin. The stars above are oddly sharp. Someone sings off-key nearby. Rurik, now thoroughly drunk, tries to wrestle the goat. The girl sits beside you. She hands you a chunk of meat, salty, greasy, warm. You don't ask what kind you eat. You've lived through a festival. You're still alive. The others begin to drift back to the huts. Someone else snores in the mud. The fires smolder. Back in your lice-ridden corner, you lie down, dizzy but full. And for the first time in weeks, you fall asleep without fear. But your last thought, just before dreams take you, is chilling. They only need one sacrifice next time to. You get assigned to a Viking ship crew for a raid you might not come back from. You wake up to shouting. Not the usual, sleepy get-to-work kind. This shouting has urgency, purpose, a tone you now recognize as preparation. You sit up fast, neck aching, heart already pounding. Outside, the village is a blur of motion men carrying shields, sharpening blades, stuffing sacks with dried fish and hardtack. The long ship moored at the nearby river is being loaded, the sails already up, sagging like a tired banner. You know what this is, a raid. Rurik appears in front of the hut with 2 guards. He points at you. You, he grunts. Then a string of words you don't understand, though the meaning is clear enough. Get moving. You're being sent, and not to farm, not to cook. You're part of the crew now. You stagger to your feet, the others watching silently as you lead toward the ship. One hands you a rough sack with stale bread and dried meat. Another slaps an axe into your hands, not sharpened, not balanced, just metal on wood. Better than nothing, worse than everything. You're shoved up the plank and into the belly of the longship, joining a cluster of rough-looking mensome warriors, some other thralls, all grim-faced and silent. You sit near the oars, where the lowest-ranked bodies go. Rurik climbs aboard last, smiling like a man about to enjoy himself in all the worst ways. And then, just like that, you're off. The ship pulls away from the dock. Water slaps the hull in a slow rhythm. The village shrinks behind you. The goat watches you leave from the bank, unimpressed. Somehow, that hurts the most. Rowing is immediate, brutal, and constant. No one explains the rhythm, you just learn by being yelled at, or slapped, or both. You fall into the pace quickly because you have no choice. Historically, Norse thralls were often forced onto long ships not as warriors, but as rowers, porters, and fodder. A raid was as much about theft as it was about intimidation. And when manpower was needed, slaves were expendable muscle. Historians still argue whether slaves ever fought willingly for their captors, or simply fought to survive. You grip the oar and pull, and pull, and pull. Your shoulders begin to burn. Your palms tear open by the second hour. Your stomach turns at the slap of the river. You're not seasick, By nightfall, you're sore, soaked, and still rowing. The warriors eat first, then the guards, then you. If anything's left, you get a mouthful of dried fish and a swig of mead, so sour it feels medicinal. You chew with your head down, careful not to look at anyone too long. One of the warriors beside you mutters something. You can't tell if it's a threat or a joke. You nod anyway. Sleep comes in shifts. You're allowed to curl up between crates while someone else rows. The wood beneath you is cold, wet, and smells like spilled ale and old salt. You dream of drowning and wake coughing. The next day, a storm hits. Waves rise high. The ship rocks and moans like a dying beast. Rain lashes your face. Someone's vomit sloshes across the deck. You bail water with a broken bowl, trying not to slide overboard. You don't pray. You don't even know who to pray to anymore. Then, just as fast as it came, the storm breaks. The clouds retreat like wounded dogs. The sun returns, and the shore appears. You see it before the others announce it. A small village, smoke curling from chimneys, people moving between huts, peaceful, unarmed. You realize what comes next. They're going to attack, and you're going to help or die trying. As the long ship noses toward the sand, your hands shake, not from the cold, but from what you might have to do. You grip the axe tighter. You've never used it in a fight. You've never used it for anything except chopping wood. Now it might meet bone. The warriors are grinning, joking. Some paint their faces in ash and blood. One hands you a small wooden token carved into the shape of a raven. You don't ask why, you just take it. When the boat hits shore, everyone moves at once, shouting, sprinting, steel flashing in the morning light. You run, not knowing where to go, only that standing still is a good way to stop breathing. The village erupts in chaos. You see homes burning. You see a man drop beside you, bleeding from the throat. You see a woman scream for her child, and you keep running. Because you're not here for glory. You're not even here by choice. You're here because Rurik pointed at you. Because someone needed hands. By the time it's over, the sky is choked with smoke. The villagers are gone scattered or dead. The loot is packed. You're not sure what you've taken. Bread, wool, silver if you're lucky, a few chickens, a goat. You sit by the edge of the ship, trembling. And for a moment, no one sees you, no one cares. You survived your first raid, but you lost something. You don't know what. You just know you're not the same. You return a little richer, but now the warriors drink and you're the entertainment. The longship glides back up the river, low in the water from the weight of stolen goods and exhausted bodies. You sit slumped over your oar, arms shaking, every muscle like a frayed rope. No one speaks. The warriors are too tired, or maybe too satisfied. You catch glimpses of what they took. Barrels of grain, a few iron tools, a chest with silver ornaments, a pair of sheep tied and bleeding. One warrior, the bald one with a scar like a lightning bolt down his cheek, cradles a necklace in his palm and grins like a man who just won a kingdom. You look down at your hands, blistered, blood-crusted beneath your fingernails, and your tunic, torn at the sleeve, stained with something you don't want to name. You didn't take anything, except memories you don't want. Back at the village, a cheer rises as the ship rounds the bend. People rush to meet it, wives, children, other landowners. Rurik stands tall at the bow like he's Odin returning from Asgard. You, hunched and invisible behind a barrel, might as well be part of the cargo. The ship bumps ashore, ropes fly, hands grasp crates and bundles, and you're pointed toward the pile of wood again. No rest, no thanks. You drag yourself to the woodpile, stacking firewood like it means nothing, like your body didn't just endure a war. You think, foolishly, that maybe you'll sleep tonight, that maybe, after surviving a raid, you've earned at least a quiet corner and a full stomach. You'd be wrong, because tonight is not for rest. Tonight is for celebration. The feast begins at sunset. Torches blaze along the longhouse wall. Tables groan beneath the weight of stolen bread and roasted meat. Jugs of mead pass from hand to hand. Someone starts beating a drum, fast and loud. The energy builds. And just when the drinking gets heavy, that's when they come for you. A guard grabs your wrist. You're pulled into the firelight like a deer dragged into the clearing. The warriors are seated in a semicircle around the pit, already tipsy, laughing, shouting nonsense. Rurik waves lazily and says something. The crowd echoes it. Then, silence. He tosses a wooden spoon at your feet. You don't understand. Then another spoon. Then a cup. They want to show. You blink. Historically, Viking feasts weren't just about food. They were about status. Entertainment was part of the ritual. Skalds recited poems. Warriors told tales. And sometimes, slaves were forced to dance, fight, or perform humiliating tasks for the amusement of their owners. Historians still argue whether this mockery was rare or central to social bonding. But from where you're standing, it feels absolutely essential. Someone whistles, another claps. You're expected to do something, so you do. You pick up the spoon, tap it on the cup. Slowly, rhythmically, you hum, just like the girl did in the fields. A song with no words, no beginning, just a pattern. A sound to fill the firelit silence. The crowd listens, then snickers, then cheers. Not because it's good, because it's funny. You tap faster, then stomp your foot. One warrior begins clapping along. Another throws a piece of bread at you. Then a chicken bone. You dodge it without breaking the rhythm. You're humiliated, but alive. Someone calls out, and two other thralls are dragged forward. One juggles stones. The other tries to dance, but trips and lands in the dirt. Laughter explodes. You keep tapping until Rurik stands. He raises his cup again. The crowd quiets. He walks over. Your tapping stops. He holds up a piece of cloth-torn tunic, stained, familiar, yours. He drapes it over your head like a cloak, mocking a crown. The crowd erupts. King Thrall. Someone shouts. You smile, just barely, because you know something they don't. Tomorrow, this will all be forgotten, but you will still remember it. Every laugh, every cheer, every part of you that wanted to scream and couldn't. The fire burns low, the mead keeps flowing. One warrior vomits near the goat pen. Rurik passes out in a chair, drooling into his own beard. You're finally allowed to slink away. You curl into your corner of the hut, still in the stolen tunic, which now smells like meat and smoke and ash. Your stomach churns not from hunger, but from shame. You close your eyes and try to hum again, but the rhythm's gone. So is the part of you that used to dream while awake. Winter closes in, and suddenly, being useful means being kept alive. You wake up to frost, not just a crisp morning chill but a full curtain of ice hanging from the hut's roof. Your breath curls in the air like a whisper you can't say aloud. The straw mat beneath you is brittle with cold, and the blanket, thin and damp, offers less comfort than a bad memory. You know what this means? Winter has come. The rules are about to change. No more festivals, no raids, no drunken longhouse singing. The days grow shorter, the work grows harder, the punishments grow meaner, and the margin between life and death narrows like a frozen river cracking underfoot. Rurik's not smiling anymore. No one is. The food rations shrink fast. You notice it first when the broth becomes clearer. Then when the turnips disappear. Then when 2 days go by without anything more than hard bread and lukewarm water. The guards eat better, but even they begin to complain. You keep your head down and your hands busy, because here's the thing. Once the cold sets in, slaves who can't work become burdens, and burdens don't survive the season. So now, being useful isn't just survival, it's strategy. You volunteer for everything: firewood, snow clearing, goatskin repairs, anything that keeps you moving, sweating, seen, because invisibility in winter means death. You saw what happened to the boy who broke his ankle last week. One day he was here, the next just his blanket folded neatly. No one said a word. Historically, Norse winters were brutal. Even free families struggled to stay fed, with stored grain often moldy or stolen by rats. Thralls, of course, had it worse. Historians still argue whether slave mortality rates in winter doubled or merely spiked significantly. Either way, if you're not valuable by the solstice, you're likely not around by spring. One morning, you wake before dawn to find your water bucket frozen solid. You take it to the fire pit, which is barely glowing. You blow on it, feed it slivers of wood, coax it back to life like a frightened animal. The flames reward you with warmth, hand a glimpse of something else. The old woman who never speaks, huddled in a corner, her breath shallow, her eyes glassy. She won't last. You know it. Everyone does. But no one says anything. You try to sneak her some hot water later that evening. Rurik's wife catches you, slaps the cup from your hand, says something sharp in Old Norse. You understand just enough. She's already dead. Let the gods have her. You walk away, hands stinging, heart colder than your fingers. That night, the girl with the straw hair sits beside you, quiet. She tears a corner from her bread and offers it to you. You nod. You don't thank Herbie, 'cause thankfulness is dangerous. It suggests expectation, and nothing in this place is guaranteed. Still, you share it. 2 bites, no words. That's friendship in winter. The days blend. You lose track of the date. The sun barely rises. The wind howls through the cracks in the longhouse like an angry spirit. Sometimes you get lucky, like when a deer carcass is found on the edge of the woods, half frozen. The meat feeds everyone for 2 days. You chew each bite like it's your last, because it might be. You sharpen your axe by firelight, not because they ask you to, because you want to be useful. You want them to notice that you're strong, healthy, alert, not sick, not slow, not dead weight. And when the firewood stack gets low, you volunteer to go out with the warriors, to collect more. That's when you see them, frozen bodies, not warriors, not even slaves, just villagers, lost travelers. The snow has glazed their faces, making them look peaceful, sculpted. You envy them, but only for a second, because you're still alive, barely. The cold is biting, but it teaches. It pares you down to the essentials. No more wasted words, no more wasted energy. Everything becomes a calculation. What to say, where to step, when to breathe. And slowly you change. Your face thinner, your eyes sharper, your shoulders straighter. You've learned the trick of survival here. Don't be the slowest, don't be the weakest, and never ever be forgotten. One evening, after a week of snow and silence, Rurik passes you by the fire. He stops, looks at you, then nods. Not a smile, not approval, just recognition. It's the closest thing to safety you've felt in months. You hold on to that moment like heat in your hands, because spring is still far away, and tomorrow might be your turn to disappear. Spring thaws the ground, but with it, old rivalries and fresh violence awaken. You wake to dripping. At first, you think it's the roof leaking again. But when you crawl outside, blinking at the soft gray light, you realize the icicles hanging from the eaves are melting. Water trickles down the path, pooling in the dirt. The frost is retreating. Spring has arrived. But don't celebrate just yet. Because, in the Norse world, spring isn't about flowers and singing birds. It's about work. Heavy work. It's about preparing fields, fixing tools, mending boats, and, most of all, remembering who hates who. Because after 3 months of sitting around drinking fermented goat milk and glaring at the same 15 people, every feud that froze solid during winter comes right back to the surface. And if you're a thrall, you're usually standing right between the swinging fists. Rurik wastes no time. You re-sent out the first morning to help clear the planting fields that are less field and more muddy battlefield. The earth is thick and soft beneath your feet, the kind of soft that sucks your boots down and tries to eat them. You spend hours dragging rocks, pulling stumps, breaking frozen clods of soil with a wooden hoe that's seen better centuries. The sun doesn't help. It taunts Ubrider, but not warm. And when it is warm, it just makes the mud worse. Then come the rivalries. The village across the Rivergunners. People have also emerged from their winter shell, and surprise, they still hate Rurik. No one says why, but it doesn't really matter. Someone's brother stole a cow, or someone's cousin insulted someone's beard. Maybe both. All you know is that tensions rise fast, and when tensions rise, you get blamed for everything. A broken plow, your fault. A missing sheep, your fault. The fact that the goat keeps eating Rurik's bootstraps, definitely your fault. Historically, Norse clans weren't unified kingdoms, but loose networks of family alliances and vendettas. Small insults could trigger cycles of revenge, and even minor disputes sometimes escalated into raids. Historians still argue whether these rivalries were personal or economic in nature, but either way, when conflict came, it always rolled downhill onto the thralls. You're not given a weapon? Of course not. You're handed a torch. Why? Because torches are useful when someone decides to retaliate. And retaliate they do. One night, long after sundown, dogs start barking. Shouting breaks the quiet. You're yanked from your sleep and shoved outside. Flames lick at the edge of the barn. Someone set it alight. You sprint toward it, barefoot in the wet grass, carrying a bucket of sloshing water. Not because you care about the barn, but because Rurik's rage will find someone to punish. You'd rather it not be you. You throw water at the fire. Useless. The others do the same. Eventually, the blaze dies, but not before half the hay and one very surprised pig are gone. The next day, a message is sent to Gunnar's village, an ultimatum. Probably one of those poetic Norse threats, like, "May your mead turn sour and your bones hollow." Rurik loves those. The day after that, a cow is found dead. It's not poisoning, it's a message, and it's working. The camp mood changes. People speak less. The guards are twitchy. Weapons get cleaned more often. Even the goat seems nervous. You, meanwhile, just try to stay useful. You chop wood. You fix fences. You fill buckets. You don't ask questions. You nod a lot and say "yeah" even when you have no idea what's being said. But it's not enough. One afternoon, two warriors get into a fight over, of all things, a pile of firewood. One accuses the other of stealing it. Fists fly. One breaks a tooth. The other breaks a rib. You happen to be standing nearby, carrying a bundle of twigs. Wrong place, wrong time. You're blamed. They don't beat you. They make you fight. They throw you in the dirt, hand you a stick, and toss another thrall in front of you, a big man, scarred, silent, and as scared as you are. Fight, they say. You glance at him. He glances at you. Neither of you wants this, but the guards are watching, smiling, so you swing. Not hard, just enough to look convincing. He grunts, swings back. Soon it becomes a rhythm, like rowing. A little harder, a little faster. They cheer. You hate it. You hate the sting on your arm, the sweat in your eyes, the way the dirt tastes when you fall. You hate them more. Eventually, Rurik stops it, laughs. "Strong slaves," he says, like he's complimenting a pair of oxen. You and the man stare at each other later in the hut, silently. You nod. He nods. That's how friendships are forged now, in mud, pain, and mutual humiliation. And still, spring presses on. The trees bloom. The snow vanishes from the hilltops. You breathe easier, slightly, but never too deep. Because every time you relax, someone lights another fire, or picks another fight, or remembers a blood debt they plan to settle before midsummer. And you stay close to the firewood stack, to the goat, to your work, because now being unseen again feels like safety. And you've learned, painfully, that visibility in this place is a weapon no one hands you for free. You're promised a path to freedom, but the catch, it might just kill you. It starts with a whisper from another thrallen older man with skin like bark and eyes that have seen more winters than anyone else in camp. He leans toward you one evening while you're sharpening tools by the fire and mutters a word you haven't heard in months. Not from Rurik, not from the guards. Free. You don't respond, not right away. You just keep sharpening, as if he said nothing, because that word is dangerous. Saying it too loud might be taken as a joke or worse, an insult. But later, when the hut is quiet and the fire is down to coals, some Norse masters allowed thralls to buy their freedom. Others, rarely, rewarded it for bravery. And once in a generation, one could win it. Through a holmgang, you sit near him and murmur how he gives you the faintest smile. Earn it. But in this camp, facts don't matter. Belief does. You wait. He tells you about a tradition, not well known, not officially spoken of, but real. He insists. A duel, not a brawl, not a drunken fight. A formal contestover, seen by men of standing, fought under rules. Win, and your master might grant your liberty, or not. But the possibility alone is enough to fuel legends. Historians still argue whether such duels ever resulted in true manumission, or were just brutal entertainment for the free class. A few days later, you hear Rurik is organizing one. A real holmgang between two minor landholders over a border dispute, and yes, a cow. Die, and at least it's quick. And suddenly the story spills across the camp like spilled ale. Some say Rurik will allow a slave to fight in his stead as a stand-in. You swing it a few times behind the hut. Your arms burn by the third swing. You haven't trained for this. Rurik stands with 2 guards, smiling like a man who knows exactly what he's doing. Others claim he's offering a contest among the thralls for amusement. And one version, wild, whispered, probably untruths, says he'll grant freedom to the last man standing. A few warriors draw lots. It's not you against Rurik. It's you against another slave. You don't believe it until your name gets called. You blink. You don't understand at first. Then you're dragged before the longhouse. He doesn't ask if you want to fight, he tells you. The edge cuts your forearm, not deep but deep enough to sting. You're not even fighting for freedom. You're fighting for spectacle. Still, the old man catches your eye later and mutters, "Survive, and they might reward you." Every splinter in your hands from wood you chopped and never used. You think of the old woman who died in silence, the boy taken away after a fall, the girl with straw-colored hair who still hums even when there's nothing to hum about. So that what you re-aiming for now? A maybe and a maybe not. Dying, he screams, collapses, doesn't get up. That night, you're handed a dull sword, rusted, nicked, heavy. No one has. The next morning, the camp gathers. The pit is cleared. 2 circles of stones mark the boundary. You recognize him, the man who juggled stones at the feast. He's bigger than you, faster, but he looks just as scared. You step into the ring, a horn sounds, and suddenly it's just you and him and your blades. You swing wild, he ducks, he swings hard. You stumble, you grit your teeth. You remember every winter night, every humiliation. You sleep near the fire instead of in the hut. But still no one says the word. You fight, not well, not clean, but you fight like you want to live. You swing low, then up, then jab with your shoulder. He falters. You bring the blade down, not on his head, not on his neck, but across his thigh. The crowd roars. You don't. You just stare at the blood on your hands and wait for someone to tell you what it means. Rurik walks over, looks at the man on the ground, then at you, then smiling raises your arm. The crowd cheers again. You're not told what you won, not yet. That night, you're given better bread, a slice of meat, a new tunic, not free, not yet. And you lie awake, wondering, was that the price, or just the first payment? You're offered a deal: learn your freedom with one final task that smells an awful lot like suicide. The morning after the holmgang, you're sore in ways you didn't know were possible. Your ribs throb. Your wrist aches from the weight of that terrible blade. Your thigh sports a bruise the size and shape of a shield. But you're alive. The guards, usually dismissive, now study you like a useful tool. Not valuable, exactly, but dangerous. The other thralls give you a wide berth, not out of fear, but out of respect. And something is different. You notice it first in the way people look at you, or superstition. Because a thrall who survives a duel must have something strange about them, something the gods like. And then Rurik calls you into the longhouse. You've never been invited in before. That, if you can complete a task for him, he'll consider your freedom. You've only seen glimpses from outside, the warm glow of the hearth, the carved beams, the long benches, slick with spilled ale. Now you stand beneath its roof, blinking at the smoke curling toward the rafters. Rurik sits at the head table, a meat leg in one hand, a horn of mead in the other. He doesn't offer you food. He offers you a proposal, he tells you slowly, and in a mix of Old Norse and gestures you've impressed him that there may be a place for you beyond the woodpile. You don't breathe. It's shaped like Thor, Odin, maybe. You're not sure. The face is snarling. The eyes are inlaid with iron. The task, a journey, a delivery. One of his men was supposed to bring a carved idol to a chieftain in the mountain Pasosa, gesture of goodwill. Or maybe a subtle threat, depending on who's telling the story. But the man was injured. You fight the urge to drink all your water at once. They might be gifted, planted in sacred groves, or buried beneath hall floors as blessings or warnings. The idol stays wrapped, heavy in your bag, pressing against your spine like a warning. Historians still argue whether these were purely religious or also political chess pieces. Either way, dropping one in the wrong hands could start a feud. And now, he wants you to go. You wrap your arms around yourself and mutter curses you didn't know you remembered. You think of the camp, of the fire, of the girl with the quiet hum, alone. It's a 4-day trek through harsh terrain, forest, ice, wolves, bandits, maybe worse. Not attacking, just watching. Its eyes meet yours, then vanish into the trees. He hands you a leather pouch. Inside, a stone statue, maybe 10 inches tall. You nod, because what else can you do? Historically, some Norse leaders used carved idols called hergar or Godar statues as diplomatic tokens. You leave at dawn. You trip over a root and lie face down in the mud for a full minute before you can even move. No escort, just a bag of bread, a skin of water, and the idol. The path cuts through pine forests and rocky slopes. The spring thaw has turned everything to muck. You slip, you curse, you get back up. By midday, your feet are soaked. Blisters bloom on your heels. You keep going. By nightfall, you find a hollow beneath a tree and curl up there. You eat half a crust. The second day brings wind, relentless, freezing. It cuts through your tunic and chills your bones. You don't miss them. You miss the idea of belonging. The third day is the worst. The path vanishes beneath fallen branches and animal tracks. You lose your way twice. A wolf crosses your path. You tighten the bag strap and keep walking. By the fourth day, you're hallucinating. You see faces in the bark, hear whispers in the wind. But then, at last, a plume of smoke and a longhouse. Not as large as Rurik's, but still sturdy, well kept. Two guards eye you as you stumble up the slope. You show them the idol. One shouts inside. You're taken in, handed a cup of water, and allowed to sit near the fire. Not welcomed, not thanked, but tolerated, which is better than you're used to. The chieftain, older, leaner, with a beard streaked in gray, studies the idol, then studies you, then nods. That's all, a single nod. That night, you sleep inside, on a fur rug, beside a real fire. You wake wondering if you're still a thrall. You wonder if Rurik meant it, if he'll keep his promise, or if this was just a way to dispose of you with minimal effort. The walk back is longer, not in distance, in doubt. Because now you've seen what life could be, and you're terrified it'll be snatched away. When the camp comes into view, your legs almost buckle. You hand Rurik the seal he sent with the idol. He takes it. He says nothing for a long time. Then good, that's it. You're sent back to the hut. No declaration, no ceremony. But the next morning, your chores change. You're told to help count grain, then to fetch tools with a guard, not for one. And that night, you sleep beside the fire again. You don't know what you are, now. But you know what you're not, just another thrall. You're given new clothes and fewer orders, but the line between freedom and illusion is razor thin. The tunic is the first clue, not ragged, not damp, not second-hand, new, well new, by Viking standards, coarse wool, brown, no holes. But when Rurik hands it to you with a grunt and a nod, it feels like silk. You run your fingers over the seams twice just to make sure it's real. Then comes the belt, a simple cord of leather, but it means everything. Because until now, your tunics hung shapeless and loose. Thralls didn't get belts. Only free men wore them, cinching their clothes like armor, a sign that their body and their labor belonged to no one else. You wrap it slowly around your waist, and no one stops you. No jokes, no laughter. Not even the goat seems to notice. But the air is different now, sharper, like people are waiting to see what you'll do with this new status. You're not given a new title. You not handed a deed or a scroll or a horn of mead with your name on it, but you're noticed. And that's dangerous in its own right, because freedom in this place is not a gate that swings open with applause. It's a quiet reshuffling of expectation. You still fetch wood, still sweep floors, still wake before sunrise, and fall asleep long after the fire dies. But now you're asked, not barked at. Now they say come instead of you. Now it's subtle. You start to wonder if it's real. Historically, some Norse thralls did purchase or earn their freedom through service. They were called Lisingi freedmen and held a strange in-between status. Not slaves, not truly free. They owed loyalty to their former masters, and some scholars argue they were watched even more closely after manumission than before. You feel that scrutiny now. The guards eye you when you walk past. Rurik's wife avoids you, as if proximity might erode the hierarchy. And the other thralls, they don't speak to you as much. Not out of resentment, out of fear. Like whatever elevated you might cost them if they get too close. Even the girl with the straw-colored hair seems more careful, her humming quieter. One evening, she slips a small carved bead into your hand without a word. You don't ask what it means. You just carry it in your pocket like a prayer. The days stretch. You're allowed into the longhouse, more often sometimes, to stoke the hearth, other times just to listen. You learn things. Who owes whom, which families plan to marry, who secretly curses whose sheep. You stop being invisible, which, ironically, makes you feel more exposed than ever. One morning, you're summoned by Rurik alone. He sits near the fire, sharpening his blade. The motion is slow, hypnotic. He gestures for you to sit. You do. And then, for the first time, he speaks to you like a man, not like property. He tells you he's considering making you Leisingia, freedman bound to him. He outlines what that means. You'll still owe him labor, but as an associate, not a thrall. You can live apart from the slave huts. You can, if you save enough, own land. You could, even, he says, with a smirk, take a wife. The word hangs there, wife. You picture her without meaning to. The girl with the humming voice, laughing maybe, carrying a basket of berries, free, but the smirk on Rurik's face reminds you. Even freedom comes with strings. There's no paper, no ritual, no date circled on a calendar, just a man's word. And a system that could take it all back the second you displease the wrong person. Still, you nod, because this is more than you ever thought possible. He tells you to start sleeping in the guest hut, gives you a key knot, a real key, just a carved bone token that means you belong somewhere. It's terrifying. You move in that night. The walls don't leak. The bed has a fur blanket. You sleep without hearing the coughs of 10 other bodies nearby. And yet, you don't sleep, because your brain is waiting for someone to drag you back. The next day, you walk past the other thralls. They don't look at you, except one, the man from the duel. His eye is swollen from a recent fight, his hand bandaged. He nods, you nod back. It doesn't feel like victory. It feels like exchange. You traded one prison for another, but at least this one has softer floors. You work harder now, not out of fear, out of momentum, because you don't know where this path leads, only that it leads forward. And you've already seen what happens when you stop moving. A visiting Jarl arrives and, suddenly, your fragile status is tested in front of the whole camp. The horns sound at mid-morning, not for harvest, not for danger. This call is different, slow, sonorous, full of weight. You're chopping wood by the forge when it echoes down the valley, bouncing off the hills like a war drum softened by snowmelt. You freeze, so does everyone else. A Jarl is coming. You know enough by now to understand the pecking order. Rurik is a petty chieftain, commanding a village and a few ships. But a Jarl, that's someone whose words reach dozens of settlements. A man who can grant favors or revoke them, whose very presence makes the air feel heavier. The camp transforms in an instant. Banners get raised. Long unused cloaks are shaken out and draped over doors. Even the goat gets brushed. You're told to wear your belt, not because anyone expects you to impress the Jarl, but because Rurik needs you to look like a success story, like proof that he runs a disciplined, thriving operation. And you are, suddenly, part of that display, not just a former thrall, a symbol. You clean up, wash your hands, scrub the blood from beneath your nails. Rurik tosses you a new tunic, dyed with faint blue, still coarse, still simple, but clearly not for a slave. Then the Jarl arrives. 6 riders, all on horseback, with cloaks that shimmer like oil in sunlight. The Jarl's helm is plain, but his sword's pommel gleams gold. His beard is meticulously braided. He dismounts, slowly, deliberately. He doesn't need to speak. The silence around him is the speech. Rurik greets him like an overeager hound. There's laughter, some muttering about alliances and tribute. And then, after meat and mead and a show of Rurik's favorite horse, the Jarl asks to see the freed one. That's you. Your lead forward. The camp falls into that awkward quiet again, the kind that happens just before someone decides what you are. The Jarl looks you over, not unkindly, just clinically. He asks, questions slow, careful Old Norse. You answer with halting replies, using every word you've learned, praying your grammar doesn't insult someone's ancestors. He nods, asks what work you do. You list them: woodcutting, herding, some minor trade. You do not say dueling. That seems unwise. Then he steps closer, asks if you'd fight again. You blink. Not now, not today, just in general. Would you fight, if asked? You hesitate, because the question isn't about strength. It's about loyalty. Would you fight for Rurik or against him? You nod. Yes, you say, as clearly as you can. The Jarl watches your eyes. Then, after a breath too long, he turns back to Rurik. Good, he says. One word, but everyone exhales. Later, you hear whispers that the Jarl was testing you, that he was looking for signs of rebellion. that he might be recruiting strong freedmen for a future raid across the sea, that he might want to buy you back. You laugh when you hear that one, quietly, but you don't sleep that night, because you know what it means when powerful men notice you. You become a token in their game, a move, a wager, a risk. The Jarl stays 2 days. On the second night, a feast is held. You're seated at the edge close enough to hear the songs, far enough to stay out of the spotlight. You chew carefully. You drink. Little Rurik toasts the Jarl. The Jarl says something about honor and luck. The warriors cheer, and then the Jarl turns his eyes toward you. Says, your name, your new name, the one Rurik gave you. Everyone quiets. He raises his horn. To one who climbed low walls, he says, and did not fall. You force a smile, not because you're proud, but because refusing the toast of a Jarl is a good way to end up wearing your own intestines. They cheer again. The music returns. You sip your mead and try not to shake, because the higher they lift you, the easier it is to drop you. Historically, freedmen in Norse society occupied a liminal space. They were not equal to freeborns, nor entirely separate from the enslaved. Some gained land, status, even wealth. Others were quietly resold, re-enslaved, or erased when they became inconvenient. Historians still argue whether social mobility was truly possible, or simply a more elaborate form of control. You go to sleep that night in the guest hut. The fire is warm. Your new belt is folded by your side. And you dream for the first time in months, not of chains, but of choices. You're invited on a raid not as cargo, not as labor, but as crew. But freedom has a price. The offer comes 2 days after the Jarl leaves. You redragging a sack of salt toward the storage hut, when one of Rurik's men, a thick-necked warrior named Bjorn, stops you with a flat palm to the chest. You ship tomorrow. You blink. That's it. No explanation. No threat. Just a command dressed up like an invitation. So you go to Rurik, and he confirms it. They're sailing at dawn. One of the crew fell sick, bad fish, or worsened. They need another hand. A strong one, a trusted one. You search his face for the trap, but it's not there. Or maybe it's hidden deeper. He tells you you'll row, fight, carry, just like the others. Same rations, same duties, same risk. And if you survive, then we talk, he says. Historically, there are scattered records of freed thralls joining Viking expeditions, not as slaves, but as part of the lowest crew tier. They slept with the goats, not in the officers' quarters. Still, they earned a cut of plunder, assuming they didn't die in the surf. Historians still argue whether this was real opportunity or a clever way to make dangerous work seem like a reward. That night, you prepare. You rewrap your belt, sharpen your borrowed blade. The girl with the humming voice passes you by the fire and touches your shoulder just once, then vanishes into the dusk. You don't sleep. Your thoughts row ahead of you. The next morning, the long ship creaks in the shallows. 30 men, some barefoot, some armored. You recognize a few. Most ignore you, but one nods. You're handed an oar, not a test, not a threat, a job. And suddenly, you're no longer being watched. You're being counted on. The sea is gray and flat, the wind slack. You row in rhythm, arms aching by the 3rd mile. Salt stings your cracked lips. There's no singing, not on this kind of raid. The plan is simple. Hit a trading post north of the Cape, small, lightly defended. Take silver, tools, maybe a hostage, if the gods smile. You're told you'll stay near the back, not in the first wave. That's supposed to be comforting. It's not. By the second day, you stop thinking about whether you're free or not. You're just there, sweating, swearing, part of the machine. You clean your blade by moonlight. You eat dried fish with the others. You're not offered jokes or stories, but you're not ignored either. That's something. Then the fog rolls in. The raid begins at dawn. The village is barely a smear of roofs on the shore. No wall, no guard post, just smoke from a hearth. You hit the beach running. Not fast, not first, but not last. The clash is short, brutal, screams, fire, splinters. You see a man fall with an axe in his throat. You see a woman swinging a cooking pot like it's a sword. You see a child hiding beneath a cart. You look away. You find yourself facing another man. Not armed, well, a staff, maybe a merchant. He charges. You don't want to kill him, but you do, because it's him or you, and you're not ready to die yet. You stumble back, breath heaving, blade shaking, but no one mocks you, no one shoves you. One warrior Bjorn again claps you on the back, a single nod, then the order to retreat. The long ship groans with weight, grain, sacks of coins, a sheep that's tied up and clearly displeased. You row until your vision blurs. You fall asleep with your face in a coil of rope, and when you wake, you're back in camp. Rurik greets you, says nothing for a while, then, calmly, you fought well. Another pause. You didn't run. Another pause. You've earned a share. You blink. He tosses a pouch at your feet. Silver, not much, but silver. Your hands shake as you pick it up, because this isn't a gift. It's wages. And wages mean something simple, ancient, terrifying. Responsibility. You're no longer his. You're your own. And that's a whole new kind of weight. The trees drip all day and hiss at night. Smoke rises from chimneys in lazy curls, and the scent of roasted meat drifts through the camp like a rumor no one wants to believe. And Rurik calls you again. Instead, he gestures to a map carved on a thick slab of bark. He points to a patch of land, small, sloped, probably rocky, but it's land. And then he says the word Lisinji, freedman. Not because you like the name, because that's how survival works here. You accept what's offered, or you risk losing everything. Just a local matter. Gunnar's village, again. Tensions still fester. Livestock's been stolen. Boundaries tested. And Rurik wants you to join, not as a shield wall grunt, as a witness, a symbol. Then, you're very much expected to not die. You agree? Because saying no to a warlord's request is a good way to end up feeding pigs instead of owning them. So you ride, not walk ride. A creaky old mare, nervous beneath you, but still your feet are off the ground. The march is short. A day's ride to Gunnar's edgelands, but time stretches. Because every hoofbeat echoes with the thought, will I come back the same? Historically, freedmen in Norse society were sometimes enlisted in low-tier raiding parties, either to prove loyalty or test their worth. Some succeeded and became trusted men. Others were accidentally lost during raids. Historians still debate whether this was honor or hazard or both. The raid begins at dawn, a burst through a flimsy fence, shouting, clashing steel, the blur of chaos. You move, your blade comes up and then down. He falls, not dead, not yet, but bleeding, and looking at you like you are the monster. You freeze, because for a moment you're him, young, powerless, angry. You shake your head. You press a cloth to the boy's wound, not out of mercy, out of memory. Later, when the camp regathers, Rurik asks what happened. You tell him. He doesn't scold. He laughs. Maybe I should have kept you chained. But he's smiling, and so are the others. Because you came back, sword bloodied, status sealed. That night, they give you a seat at the fire, not at the head, not among the first, but not behind the woodpile either. They pass you a horn, you drink. They pass you bread, you eat. The stars come out, the wind softens. And in this world, that might be the most dangerous position of all. The seasons shift again and you finally face the truth. Freedom here doesn't mean escape. It means endurance. Summer comes fast in the north. The snow doesn't melt, it vanishes. 1 week you're lighting fires to keep your fingers. The next you re-squinting at the sun as you dig trenches in dirt that smells of pine and ash. You've been free officially for nearly 2 moons, or so they say. You eat better now, sleep better. Your skin isn't stretched tight over your ribs anymore. And the calluses on your hands aren't just from chopping wood there, from training, from riding, from holding a sword that's no longer dull. But here's what they don't tell you about being free in a Viking camp. The chain doesn't vanish, it just moves. Now it wraps around your duty, your role, your value. Now you're expected to speak like them, walk like them, fight like them. You're no longer invisible. You're accountable. You don't miss the past, but you don't fully trust the future either. Rurik calls you less now, not because you're irrelevant, but because you've become predictable, reliable, safe. That should make you proud. It makes you uneasy. Historically, Norse freedmen Lasinger occupied a peculiar social tier. They could own property, marry, testify in court, but they were also expected to remain loyal to their former masters, even defend them in legal disputes. Some rose in status. Others found themselves trapped in expectations just as tight as their former shackles. Historians still debate whether manumission was a gift or a clever form of long-term control. One night, a trader comes through from a southern port. He speaks your mother tongue. Your ears prick like a startled deer. You speak to him in private, halting, rusty, but clear enough. He tells you there's a ship leaving in a week, heading south, far south. He offers to sneak you aboard. You say nothing, because here's the strange thing. You're not sure if you want to leave. Not because this place is kind, not because Rurik is noble, not because you've forgotten what it means to be chained, but because you've built something, not a home, not yet, but the shape of one. You have a patch of earth to sleep on, a name, a belt, and maybe that's what real freedom is here. Not escape, endurance, and something small that's truly yours. The next morning, you rise before dawn, feed the animals, sharpen tools, walk past the fire pit where Rurik's men are still snoring. The trader watches you from a distance. You give him a nod, just one, and keep walking. Because sometimes surviving a Viking slave camp isn't about breaking free. It's about staying just long enough to change what the place turns you into. And maybe, just maybe, changing the place to. And now, let's slow everything down. The fire in the camp is fading, the last embers glowing orange against the dark soil. The clanging of iron, the barking of dogs, the endless, exhausting rhythm of labor, all of it softens to a hush. You're not standing in the cold anymore. You're warm, safe, wrapped in a tunic that's truly yours, with your name stitched in its seams, even if only in spirit. You made it through storms, through frost, through eyes that never saw you as human. You lifted stones, buried the broken, fought for your breath in a world that didn't want you to take it. And yet, You're still breathing. You saw what people can become when the world sharpens them into tools. But you also saw kindness bloom in dirt, quiet songs in silence, beads carved from bark, nods that meant, I see you. You're not a thrall. You're not just a freedman. You're a survivor of something ancient, something that clung to bones and frost and belief. And in your quiet resistance, in the way you carried water and refused to forget your name Evan, when they gave you another you, planted something they never expected, hope. So now, rest. Let your thoughts slow. Let your hands unclench. You've earned a moment without weight, without duty, without fear. Let the night cradle you like the sea cradles old ships, drifting toward gentler shores. Close your eyes and dream of a field that's only yours, under a sky that finally stops watching. End of script. Sweet dreams.